Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Today is an NFC South Preview. I'm butchering already. This is going to be off to a lovely start. I'm joined with my father as we're going to here to recap the NFC South, and I hope you're ready for fireworks because there's not going to be a lot we're going to agree on here.
That's probably true.
Yep. Saints fans, just get your pickaxes ready, get your pitchforks, get your torches ready. You're going to be treating me like Frankenstein in the movie. So,
Actually, it's Frankenstein's monster.
oh my God. I think that's the proper response. Let's start off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, this team is the most recent team to win a Super Bowl in this division, but they're not looking too good. They kind of sold everything to get to the Super Bowl and win it. So I got two questions. Was it worth it to win the Super Bowl now that they're going to have to pay the repercussions? And are they one of the front runners to get the first overall pick and be in the Caleb Williams Drake May sweepstakes?
I'd say yes to both. Anytime that you can win a Super Bowl, that is the brass ring. And so it is important for everybody to get there. So, yes, the fact that they won a Super Bowl was great. And, I mean, if it wasn't for health reasons last year, who knows what could have happened, but their offensive line was decimated. They had some, injuries on their offensive players and then in the defense as well. So we don't know what's going to happen, but I honestly think they're just an aging team. They paid the price. They got the Super Bowl ring and now it's time to rebuild. And yes, they are definitely one of the front runners for the first overall pick.
So this is going to come to another question because we could spend time talking about the Bucs, and I'm sure we will because really it's what we're going to focus on will probably be more the draft class. But here's a question for down the line because neither of us expect them to be in contention for the division or playoffs. Could you see them make some trades at the deadline, maybe trading a Ryan Jensen to a contender, a Mike Evans, a Chris Godwin, a Cameron Brate, someone like that to a contender trying to win a Super Bowl?
No, not really. I mean, honestly, I think it'll just depend upon where they're at. I mean, Jensen, he's still got a few good years left. Maybe some of their wide receiver talent that's aging, that might be that they trade away to get some assets for the draft and clear up some salary cap space. But they still have talent, just not in some of the right places.
If you were in the position the Seahawks were contending and they had like an injury at center and they were in the rumors for Ryan Jensen, how pumped would you be?
Oh, I mean, yeah, you make the trade, you figure out later on. I love how nasty Jensen is. So yeah, I would be totally pumped with that. But I'm stoked on Seattle centers, and that's for another day.
Next week. So we look at the Bucs here, and a big question mark is the starting quarterback. It's presumed the starter is Baker Mayfield, but so far through training camp, it has been coming out that Kyle Trask has been doing better than Baker. Do you see a scenario where Kyle Trask is the week one starter, or do you think that happens later on in the season if they're out of playoff contention? They want to see the young guy get some reps.
I don't know. I've seen a couple things put on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it now. But in the interviews, that I've listened to and, watching on training camp on the NFL Network, I haven't seen anything where one person's outplaying the other.
Yeah. I'm biased towards Kyle Trask. I'm a big-time Garrett's fan. I'd love to see him play. I don't know if he's an NFL starting quarterback. But you can also look at the bright side of this Bucs team. They have maybe the best defensive player in this entire division in Vita Vea. I'm not saying his full name. They have one of the better cornerbacks with Jamal Dean. And probably the best linebacker in Levante David.
I would agree with all those.
Where would you view this defense? Do you still think it's elite? Or is it kind of just going to fall down a bit just because age is going to happen? You're probably going to see more injuries. Shaq Barrett has had issues staying healthy last year. Do you see him getting back on course and everything? And do you see the young guys they have drafted take that step and kind of elevate that defense as well?
Yeah, actually, I think their defense is going to be top 10 again. Uh, it's you can't run on them. Their secondary is stout. Bringing in Cansey to put beside Vita Vea, now you're going to have interior penetration because are you seriously going to double team Cansey and put one on one with Vita Vea? No, nobody's dumb enough to do that. So I think they're going to be able to get more pressure from the interior. And I really like Yaya Diaby. I think that he'll be a good edge rusher for them as well. He's kind of in that same mold where, he's not super big, but he's pretty bendy and he's fast. And so I think that they'll do really well on the defensive side. It's the offensive side where they're going to struggle.
This is going to bring me to the next thought process, and you and I are both high on him, and I think he's going to come out, have a much better year. Joe Tryon Smith, am I saying his last name correctly?
Yeah, I just call him Tryon still just because that's what he was when he played in college.
We both like him. I think he can make that step forward. This is his third year, if I'm correct, the NFL. This is kind of around the time period that an edge rusher who has maybe not been the best coming out of college to kind of take a step forward. He's got the ability still. He still is just a great athlete. I think he has a good year. I could see him getting 8 to 9 to 10 sacks. Do you picture something like that in line for him with the talent of this defensive line, make it easier for him?
You would definitely like to see that, and I think that he can definitely do it. It's just a matter of will he? I mean, I honestly thought he was going to be doing much better than he did, especially last year. I thought he was going to have a breakout year last year. So I'm hoping that it's this year, but time will tell. Their defense is still going to be really good, though.
Yeah. We're going to get into this in a second, and I think it needs to be talked about. Is this Todd Bowles last year's NFL head coach?
Sadly, I think it is, and it's through no fault of his own. I mean, it seems like, you bring in Bowles when you want to fire somebody quick and get a pretty high draft pick. I mean, he was kind of screwed over in Arizona.
No. That was Wilkes. He was New York.
That was Wilkes, excuse me.
He's the Jets.
Yeah, Bowles was Jets. The same thing. He was screwed over there. And so I think that he gets the unfortunate tasks. And a lot of times when teams are bad to begin with and new head coaches come in and they can't turn it around because ownership is too impatient and they don't have time to get their own players in. Sadly, it happens all too often. And he's just, this will be, another bad example of his coaching. And it's sad, but I think he's done.
Yeah, it's hard to see him survive this. He might just be a guy that's just going to be a career defensive coordinator, which is fine. He's proven he knows how to coach a good defense. He did that well in Arizona with Bruce Arians. He did that well in Tampa Bay with Bruce Arians. But now it's time to move on to another team in the NFC South, and that's the Atlanta Falcons. And we can talk about their draft class, which we will. Talk about their young talent. Talk about the guys they brought in. They've done so much for that team. But the big question is Desmond Ridder the guy in Atlanta?
Maybe not the guy in Atlanta, but the guy for Atlanta. I think so right now. I think he will be good enough to help them win games. He was pretty efficient last year when he played. I think their offense only got better. And they have more weapons on the outside for him as well. So I think he's going to be potent. He's not going to, be a top 10 quarterback in this NFL, probably not even a top 16. So, but I think he can be efficient, and with how they're going to be playing on offense, efficient is going to be good enough to win games.
So you liked him a lot more coming out of college than I did. I didn't see enough last year to make up my mind on him if he is NFL ready. And I think you'd agree with me on that.
Oh, he didn't have. Yeah, he didn't play enough games to where you could get a good feel. But I mean, he was successful in the games that he did play in. There's just sample size is too small.
I can see the Falcons doing exactly what the Panthers did last year. Get off to a sluggish start, finish strong, but ultimately not make the playoffs, and then trade up and get a quarterback. I could definitely see that. And to the benefit of the Falcons, they've drafted so well all over the field that they can afford to give up picks to go up and get a guy. You got Kyle Pitts, who I'm begging Atlanta to use properly and stop using him as a blocker. Use him as an actual weapon. You got Drake London on the outside. Brought in Mac Hollins, who is a good number two, was very good with the Raiders. And that defense, they have so much young talent, and they brought in Calais Campbell. A personal favorite of ours as we watched him grow up at Montana State and Troy Anderson. Like, they have so much talent, and A.J. Terrell as well. The question is, can they just figure it out, the quarterback position, because this roster is loaded. Like, if they have these spots hit on the defense, it's a legitimate Super Bowl roster with all the talent they have. They have a stud running back, which everyone expects at this point, in Bijan Robinson. They drafted the best tight end prospect of all time, possibly, and he has shown potential. They just haven't used him as well. Drake London was really good last year. The offense line is good, and they drafted Matthew Bergeron to come in and play on that line. Play, I believe, guard most likely.
I think he'll be guard.
They have so much talent. It's just the big question mark is, can Ritter be it? Which is why I can see them winning the division, or I can see them finishing last. Well, last is kind of a stretch with the Bucs. I can see them finishing on the lower end would be more right.
Well, I mean, you have to realize that between the Saints, Atlanta, and Carolina, they all finished, I mean, literally neck and neck. So I don't think that they did anything to go backwards, and because of that, I think that it's going to be another logjam at the top of the division this year. I think all three teams are going to be vying for that first place spot, and I think they're going to beat the hell out of one another. It's just going to be who comes out in the end. And Arthur Smith has showed that his formula, even though it's not what the rest of the NFL prescribes to currently, has been effective. I mean, it was effective in Tennessee. It was effective the last couple of years in Atlanta. So, I'd say that moving forward, they're definitely trending upwards.
So here's a question: if Todd Bowles and Arthur Smith are both let go, and the Bucs have the first overall pick, which head coaching job would be more desirable, you think? The Falcons with all the talent they have on the roster, or the Bucs would possibly get a franchise quarterback?
So if Arthur Smith was let go, where are you thinking they're going to finish then?
Kind of just top 10 pick, I would say. Top 10.
Okay. I'd rather have Atlanta.
I think it would depend on how I see. It's hard to ignore Atlanta's talent, as I've said. This is a team that would not surprise me if they're very, very good. It would not surprise me if they struggle a bit. But now it's time to move on, and Carolina Panthers are coming in. They have a brand new regime, an established NFL coach who I love. Brought in a running back who I think is very talented. Drafted the quarterback I have been talking about for how many years now?
Yeah, you've been on Carolina forever.
This team's loaded. I love the coaching staff. I think this team, if anyone from the NFC South can make noise this year, I think it's them. I think Frank Reich is one of the better coaches in the NFL. Did he have a rough year last year? Everything went wrong in Indianapolis, and he was the fall guy, unfortunately. Matt Ryan was not the guy anymore, and that pains me to say because I've grown up a big Matt Ryan fan. Jonathan Taylor was hurt. The offensive line fell apart. The defense got hurt. Like, there were so many issues with that Colts team that's hard just for me to point and say that was Frank Reich's fault. Let alone Jim Irsay has not done himself any favors. And
no, well, he doesn't do himself a lot of favors. So
no, he does not. I'll give it to him. He sticks to his brand very well. And you look at Carolina, Brian Burns. I think is probably up there with some of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Their secondary, it has some room to grow, but I think they got the pieces. I really do like J.C. Horn a lot. The linebacker room, I think, is good and solid. The line is improving. Ikema Kwanu was amazing last year. The receiver room, it's an Asian out of Thielen, which isn't all that great. Jonathan Mingo, who I did like in the draft process. DJ Chalk, who was interesting. And Terrence Marshall, who I did like as a prospect, but has not delivered the NFL. And you look at the running back room, they got Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard. Man, I love this team.
And I think they're a really good team. They have a lot of talent on the defense, which we talked about that. They brought in a lot of help on the offensive side. I've always been a fan of Miles Sanders. I think behind that offensive line, he can be really, really good. Hayden Hurst, I mean, he bounces around a lot, but I don't think it's anything that he's done. Maybe he's not the greatest blocker in the world, but we've seen a lot of tight ends that aren't the greatest blocker in the world. And he catches the ball when
he's a safety
he needs
net.
to. Yeah. Right. And so, you brought up their coaching staff. I mean, you think about it from the top on down. I mean, so far as a quarterback tree, they've got a lot of coaches, that are going to help Bryce Young. And so, I mean, that's amazing. And he'll have success because of that. Right. And then, you think about who else they brought in the off season. I do like Josh McCown, but they brought in Evero for the defensive coordinator position. Dom Capers, who probably knows more about defense than anybody in the NFL right now. Well, he's like 120 years old. So
hey, that's your age.
Not quite. I'm getting close though, But the other thing is I mean, one of their senior assistants is Jim Caldwell as well. So their coaching staff is absolutely amazing. When I was looking at this the other day prior to this, I was like, I didn't know they were there, and I didn't know they were there. I'm gonna digress here real quick, but did you know that TJ Yates is a coach for the Falcons?
Yes, I did.
He's a wide receivers coach.
I did not know he was a wide receivers coach. I knew he was on the Falcons.
Yeah. Sorry. When I wanted to bring that up just because I was like, oh my gosh, so it's pretty funny. But yeah, their coaching staff is absolutely amazing. So I think that they're definitely trending upwards. As well as I do that I wasn't super high on Bryce Young. He's got all of the tools. His mental capacity for being a quarterback is there. He throws a pretty ball. I'm just concerned with him holding up, and everybody's like, oh yeah, he played against the best of the best. It's like playing in the NFL. Well, we've seen bigger quarterbacks that have succeeded in college and played in the SEC, and they get to the NFL and they've gotten cremated. So yeah, the SEC has a lot of talent, but it's still not the NFL.
But do you have anything else to add about the Carolina Panthers, or do you want to move on to the Saints?
I think we can move on because most of the other stuff when we start talking about them is going to be draft and so.
So the New Orleans Saints, have they figured out their offense?
I think that their offense is going to be better. I mean, just in comparison with the rest of their division last year, and we all know that the division struggled, right? But they were 16th for passing. Okay, do you know where everybody else was?
Panthers were, I want to say, around 29th or 30th, if I'm correct.
Panthers were 29th.
Falcons were 27th.
Falcons were 31st.
Ah! Was it the Bucs that were 27th?
No, Tampa Bay was a little higher. I'm trying to find it again. Um, uh, no, I can't even. Tampa Bay was actually for the passing offense. Tampa Bay was second overall with 4,500 yards.
Really?
Yeah.
Good God, Brady. How much carrying did you do there?
So, but I mean, so their offense. I mean, you figure that they threw for 3,700 yards last year with Andy Dalton, and I consider Carr a huge upgrade there. Their offensive line is going to get better. Their weapons are pretty much the same, although I love A.T. Perry. I think that A.T. Perry is going to end up coming in and playing big slot, and he is going to make a name for himself relatively quickly. I think bringing in Jamal Williams for them was big because he's a pounder, and he'll help. Last year, they ran the ball a lot for no success, right? So that's if at first you don't succeed, try and fail again. That was their motto for the running game last year. So unless you want to talk about when they played Seattle, and everybody ran on Seattle last year. So, but yeah, I think that their offense is going to be marketably better this year.
And this is something that needs to be addressed. I don't expect Alvin Kamara to play much for the Saints this year, if he plays at all.
I don't think he's playing football again.
But let's not act like, and I'm not talking to you because you know this, to the Saints fans, let's not act like losing Alvin Kamara is a giant downgrade based off the production he brought last year. Because I didn't realize he was having as bad of a season last year until they played the Steelers, and I was like, he was non-existent because I played him in fantasy that week, and I saw he scored like barely any points, and I looked into him, I was like, oh God, he has been able to do nothing this year, which could be behind the offensive line or because Andy Dalton, whatever, there could be a lot of reasons. But he is an aging running back, and it's probably getting a little bit past the time that you move on. And as you said, bringing Jamal Williams. Is Jamal Williams an upgrade over Alvin Kamara? That's hard to say because I don't think Jamal Williams is as big of a receiving option as Kamara. But as a running option, I do think he is better. And even if Kamara were to play this year, Kamara does not work well as the bell cow. He needs a guy to play off of. That's why the Saints always had Mark Ingram. That's why they always had Latavius Murray. He needs someone to play off of. So if he does come back, Jamal Williams does bring that. I am not a fan of this Saints offensive line. I have not been a fan of their drafting the past couple of years. And Trevor Penning, I know you liked him. I did not. I don't have high hopes for it. But they do have a young stud on the offense in... okay, please correct me if I get them wrong, because I know the other ones in the Jets. Chris Olave is on the Saints, correct?
Olave's on the Saints, yes.
Yes, okay. I got it right. Olave is a young stud. He is going to become one of the best wide receivers in the league pretty quickly. And I do think Michael Thomas is no longer a Saint. We can stop playing this game of, is he going to play for them this year? Is he going to play? I think it's, even if he does come back, I think he's traded. And I look at this defense, my concern with the defense is they are getting older. They're kind of aging out. They're similar to the Bucs, but they're older than the Bucs, which it seems a little crazy. But on the defense side of the football, Cameron Jordan, who has been a longtime stud, is 32 years of age. He's no spring chicken. I actually talked to you about possibly a trade scenario with him a couple weeks ago. You said no, but I don't think it's out of the question they move off him. They drafted Isaiah Foskey, who is... We'll get to him in a second for me. I don't think the Saints team's as good as everyone else does. Maybe I'm wrong, but I look at them and I just say, same old, mediocrity.
Yeah, here's the thing in this division, and this is what I always give you grief about, right? You have been high on the Carolina Panthers for the last 5 years. You have been preaching how they are going to shock everybody for the last 5 years.
They were so close last year.
The only person that they have shocked for the last 5 years, most of the time, is you. Okay? Similarly, for the last 5 years, you have been down on the Saints. And so we talk about this all the time. I've been higher on the Saints than you have. You've been higher on Carolina than I have. And all I'll continue to go with is the Saints coaching staff has been there, with the exception of Sean Payton. They've all been there for quite a while. They all know exactly what they're doing. They work well together. They brought in a quarterback that is he Drew Brees? No, he's not Drew Brees. But the other point of that fact is that their offense isn't what it was. It's not run the same way as when Brees was there. So they don't need that. They're going to start stretching the field a lot more now. I really think that that's one of the things. You have Olave, some of the other receivers they have. You can use A.T. Perry in the middle of the field and then run the ball. Their offensive line, I mean, if you go back and you look at the stats, their offensive line actually did better than what you think it was. Penning got hurt last year. When he came back, he was playing a little bit better. We'll see. He was raw coming out, and we know that. So you can't just sit there and say when the first few games that he played, he gave up pressures, he gave up sacks, because it happens. So I really like the fact that even though they lost a lot of their their defensive talent, they lost Davenport, they lost Shai Tuttle, they lost Onyemata and Caden Ellis, right? But they brought in Brian Brise, they brought in Foskey, so they brought in players to help them. They brought in Nathan Shepard from the Jets free agency, so like I said, they've got and Kalen Saunders. I forgot. I just saw that the other day that they brought him in. So their interior defensive line is going to be pretty dynamic, I think. And I can't believe that you're down on this team that brought in Jesse James, tight end, drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, because, I mean, that was your boy forever.
I have his jersey actually behind me in my studio. It's legitimately hung up on my wall. Not joking. They also brought in your boy at tight end. The greatest tight end in Seattle Seahawks history, Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, you mentioned that the other day. I'm going to just say that they brought him in so that he could retire. So
when he's our starting tight end, I'm going to have fun with that. No, and I just look at the Saints, and both of us have been wrong on I've been on the Panthers, you've been wrong on the Saints. Neither team made the playoffs in the past 2 years. I think we look at them, and I think one has drafted the talent well that I like, and the other just hasn't. They've been zagging while the Zeke's been okay, hang on. They've been zagging while the league's been zigging. I feel like I butchered that, but I'm trying to get my point across. And hey, we'll find out. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll come on here in a minute. I'll make a video about it, and like the Eagles fans did last year, Saints fans, you can come get me. I'm not afraid to admit it. But it's time for us to move on, because we have a lot of stuff to talk about. We spent pretty much 30 minutes talking about the teams overall, and let's get into kind of some rankings here. And I got my coaching staffs up first. You got your coaching staff rankings ready?
I'm ready.
Fourth place, I have the Bucks. I think it's obvious Todd Bowles is getting fired. This feels like a team that's going to have a brand new coaching staff next year, so it's hard for me to put them any higher than 4.
I would agree with you. I have the Bucks fourth, and then I have the Falcons coming in at third.
I have the Saints coming in at third. Dennis Allen's been a head coach for, I think this is going to be his 4th year as a head coach. His teams have kind of never been over 500. He's never finished over 500 in the 3 years he's been a head coach. Maybe he's just a greater defensive coordinator than he is a head coach, in my opinion. I'm not high on the Saints team. And number 2, I have the Falcons. Arthur Smith, unproven, but he has had a bit more success as a coordinator than Dennis Allen has for me. He turned Tennessee's offense around. He pretty much got Tennessee to the AFC Championship game behind Derrick Henry. And I think he found his Derrick Henry in Bijan Robinson to run his offense more.
I'll pick the Saints as team 2. For a lot of what I had said before, I mean, their team, all their coaches and staff is in place, and they've been there for a while. They all know what they're expected to do. So, and the weird thing is you said this is 4 years. No, no.
He spent 2 years with the Raiders.
Yeah, but I'm talking about in New Orleans.
But this is his 4th year as a head coach overall, though. I'm saying his track record has not been great as a head coach overall.
Oh, yeah, but you can't. 2012 to 2014 in the Raiders, yeah, no. You got to remember who was actually doing a lot of the drafting and stuff. That was just bad.
Yeah, well, and it's clear we both have the Panthers number 1. We kind of spent a while raving about their coaching staff when we're talking about them. Frank Reich, I think, is a great head coach. Evero, and I hope I'm pronouncing that last name correctly because I'm always afraid I'm going to butcher it. I thought he did wonders with Denver. I'm excited to see what he does here. I hope he doesn't do the Vic Fangio defensive thing of, let's just let Brian Burns take all the double teams, let everyone else feast. I hope he lets Burns do his thing. But he did really go Denver, so he kind of earned the benefit of the doubt. And Don Capers, as you said, he's been coaching almost as long as you've been alive, I'm pretty sure, at this point.
God, maybe even longer. I don't know. He's a legend.
Yeah, he's been coaching forever. The offense staff is newer, but as you said, they brought in Josh McCown as a quarterback coach who seems a lot of people did love him as a quarterback guy, just was not as thought of him getting the Texas head coaching job. He seemed to have been a high, I don't know how you want to call it, like a guy everyone wanted, highly pursued in the offseason as a quarterback coach. Don't know much about their OC yet, unfortunately. Excited to see what he brings. And then Frank Reich, who will pretty much be the guy the offense is based around.
Yeah, we've talked about it, so I just think that they've got an amazing coaching staff.
Do you think, and this is real quick, the Panthers made the biggest upgrade in the offseason moving off from Matt Rule's staff to Frank Reich and his staff? The biggest upgrade at anything you could do.
Oh, well, I was never a fan of Matt Rule. So the fact that they brought in Reich, who I thought kind of was a scapegoat for Indy, and then let him bring in the staff that he brought in, it shows their willingness to spend money because some of those coaches couldn't have been cheap. And so I just think that they want to win there. And he's got the coaches to do it. They'll teach well. They've got a lot of game experience. They've got just a lot of experience overall in the NFL. So there's not too many things that are going to surprise that coaching staff.
Okay, well, up next is draft class, and I'm going to let you start off with who is your lowest ranked draft class in this division?
The Falcons.
Wow.
Yeah, and well, but hear me out. So
I can already see our list is going to be disagreeable. Okay.
Oh yeah, so Bijan Robinson, amazing. We both think that he is probably, in all totality, the top 1, 2, or 3 player taken up in that draft. So I like this pick, right? Bergeron, I think he's gonna be. I think he's gonna play in to be a good player. Zach Harrison, I wasn't really a huge fan of him. I just don't. I don't see him like a lot of other people see him. Clark Phillips, not a huge fan of him. I think that he's going to get exposed in the NFL. Sorry, you asked me. I'm telling you. And then we talked the other day. I don't really know who the safety from Alabama was, and then the guard from South Carolina. Not really too much known about him either. So their first 2 picks, Robinson and Bergeron, I really liked. But I honestly think that they took Bergeron too high because you got to think he was a high second, and I think they could have got him even if they would have traded down to acquire some more draft picks because they didn't really have. I mean, they only had 6 picks overall anyway. So I don't think they needed to take him there. I think they could have traded down some and acquired some more picks.
With how linemen were going in the draft, I don't think they could have got him. But time for me to get my fourth, and I got the Saints here. And this is not because I outright hate their class. I've been very negative on them. This is because they were my fourth-ranked class, because I like the other classes just more. We'll get into that in a second. Brian Brzee was one of the hardest guys for me to grade in the past cycle because his 2021 film was great. He was a top 10 pick. His 2022 film was just bad, straight up bad. If he was just drafted on 22, he's probably a mid-round pick. If he was drafted on 21, he's a top 10 pick. And I think a lot of that comes down to his defensive coordinator. He didn't use him as efficiently as you should have. He just wasn't all there. And you can be said that about every other prospect that came out of Clemson this past year. They all had major down years, which made me really question them overall.
It should have made you question their coaching staff, because if you go back and you look at the,
I am questioning their coaching staff on this.
If you go back and you look at the 21 tape and look at how their gap integrity was versus last year, what you're going to notice is that they were playing completely different. And they're playing completely different is because what he's coaching that they're playing off. So they're not penetrating. They're reacting. The problem is in the SEC, in when you're playing some of these teams, right?
ACC.
Well, yeah, but they played against some SEC teams as well.
They didn't play. Oh, they did play a bowl game. My bad. They played against Tennessee.
Okay, so but if you're playing these teams, right, and you're just reacting, and you're letting these offensive linemen get their hands on you, half the battle's already lost.
Yeah, I think we'll see more of that with Clemson this upcoming year. If their DC doesn't improve it, I think you gotta get rid of him, because it's clear they messed Brett Venables last year. Isaiah Foskey, he was a Saints pick, and I don't mean I like the pick. I thought they could have got some other guys there. I believe Derek Hall was on the board at that point. The guy the Seahawks. Was that
Hall
the pick
was
before?
Gone.
Okay, that was the pick
Hall
before.
Was gone.
There was the other guy. There was another guy on the board. I'm blanking off his name on top of my head. I'll get back to that in a second. But you got Keandre Miller, who I just didn't. I didn't like hate the pick. I didn't love the pick. I was just kind of like, I understood it because they didn't have Alvin Kamara. That was very clear. They needed to draft a running back. I would have preferred Roshan Johnson there, but hey. Nick Savati, I did not watch much of him, so I can't judge him. Jake Heener feels more of a college quarterback. Wouldn't be surprised if he eventually gets a coaching role at some point in the NFL. Jordan Howden, thought he was a solid safety at Minnesota. And A.T. Perry is kind of the pick I did really, really love from them, because I think it was medicals or something that had him fall down so far, but he was a very talented player. Should have got drafted much higher. That was a good pick overall for the Saints. And hey, they have been pretty good historically at drafting wide receivers. Keon White, that was the guy. That was the guy, Keon White. That's who I would have drafted.
Yeah, but I was kind of shocked that Keon White went as low as he did. So there might be something there for him. I mean, you and I talking going into the draft, we were both high enough on him that where we thought he could have gone in the first round. So the fact that he didn't, I think there's something there. And have you heard anything about him in this offseason?
I think NFL scouts valued him less than we did. Because if I remember correctly, a lot of people who had ties to NFL did not have him as a first-round pick. They had a much lower. A lot of people I saw had him as a third-round pick. So I think that's just difference of opinion when it comes to that. But who is your third-ranked draft class?
The Saints. And I like their class. I mean, I really do. I like Brzee, and I like Foskey. I think that in the role that they're going to use him as, because basically he's going to be replacing Davenport, who didn't do as much as what they drafted him, where they drafted him, and what they gave up to get him. Kendre Miller, who knows? I like Nick Salvadori. I thought he was good. Jake Haener, So here's the thing. I think he's got moxie. I actually think he'll be a good backup quarterback, right? And the thing is he's kind of, I don't know, he's kind of a Derek Carrish kind of quarterback. So
Are you just saying that because they went to the same college?
I was giggling and thinking you were going to bring that up, but Jordan Jordan Howden, he's from Minnesota, so he's going to be a hitter. And then I love A.T. Perry. I did a draft segment on A.T. Perry, so you know how much I love him. So I really like their class, but when I say I really like their class, I like the first two picks. I think they could have got Miller later, and they could have got somebody else. In fact, there were other running backs that I would have taken well before Miller. I like Salvadori, I like Hayner, and then I love A.T. Perry. So, yeah, and I think that you're going to be pleasantly surprised with what Brise brings to the team.
We'll say I can't really knock Brise. He was picked right around where I thought he would go. It was just hard to judge him based off the film, and let alone he did have some personal tragedy that I'm sure did affect him on the field.
Saints fans, all I'm going to say is everything that he has said this segment has been negative about the Saints. Just keep remembering this so that when the Saints come out and ball out and surprise everybody this year, make sure that you post and tell him he was wrong.
Listen, I'll make a video and then you can come roast me. Eagles fans had a blast last year.
Oh yeah, you were bad on the Eagles last year. That was funny.
Yeah. They got me good. I deserved it. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are my third place. And again, this is not because I don't like the class. In fact, I love the first two picks. I love their second pick a lot more than you do, I'm sure. But after that,
no, I like him too.
But like I kind of like Yaya Dibby. Is it Dibby or
Diaby?
I'm just calling him Yaya. Yaya was someone I did like. I didn't like him as much as everyone else did. I thought he was picked right around where I thought he would go, maybe a little lower, but low end third round, fine. Dennis, I was not a fan of at Pitt, but I watched him and I said, "That's your Devin White replacement." I got the pick. Payne Durham, I know you're going to talk about him, so I'll just say this: he is a blocking tight end.
He's a beast.
Yeah, well, that's why. Josh Hayes, someone I didn't watch much of personally, but I did notice him when I was watching Julius Brett's film. He was kind of all over the place. Thought he was decent in pass coverage, a better downhill type DB, good tackler, solid tackler. Trey Palmer, I liked him at Nebraska. Don't know if he makes this team just with how low they are at receiver, but I think this is a guy that makes practice squad or gets picked up by someone else. And Jose Ramirez, this is a pick I like for your last pick. It's a gamble, but this gamble pays off, especially with Todd Bowles getting to handle him the first year. I think this could be a really, really good steal. Late in the draft, developmental guy that can possibly be a longtime Buck, getting them sack numbers, coming off the edge, opposite of Shaq Barrett or Joe Tyron or whoever they have playing on the opposite side of him. So who would be your second team?
My second team is the Bucks.
Oh.
And
enjoy the 20-minute paid Durham segment, everyone.
So one of the things that I'll say, I'm going to preface about why they're my second favorite draft class in this one, and it was a toss up because I almost put them first. So when you have a draft class, you're looking for best overall player at the time, of course, right? Everybody says that's what they do. They always take the best overall player, right? And nobody wants to draft for need because that's a bad thing. When you can take a player that could be considered the best overall player at the time, and he fits a need and also a play style. Cansey, like I said earlier, put him next to Vita Vea. Cansey's one of his best attributes is he's a penetrator, right? You can't double team him. You're going to put him one-on-one, which means he is going to be in the backfield, right? because once again, Vita Vea is the man in the middle. Cody Mack. What's one of the biggest things that we talked about for Tampa Bay for shortcomings last year? The fact that their offensive line was devastated. So now you bring in a guy that can play center, guard, and tackle, right? Is he going to start this year? I think he has a potential to do that, but even if he's not, he's a Swiss Army knife at the offensive line, and he's good. He's got moxie. He's tough as hell. I love the pick. Yaya Diaby, I'm higher on him than you are. And like I said, he's just going to be coming in off the edge because once again, you're going to have the interior of that defensive line just pushing the interior of that pocket, right? And so now you're just going to let your edges terrorize. They are just going to peel back and get to the quarterback any way they can. I like Servosi as a pickup. Is he one of the top 3 linebackers in this class? No, but he's super solid, and super solid is good. There's no reason why that in the 4th round. Payne Durham, you said it. I love him. I thought he's great. He's tough. He can catch the ball, but once again, when you have a struggling offensive line, he'll stay in there and he'll knock some people on their ass. The other guys, I didn't watch as much of them, but that's 5 picks where I thought that those guys have a definite chance of hitting. And more importantly, 3 of them not only were the right pick at the right time, but they also fit a huge need and a play style for them. So I just love the draft. And like I said, I was really tempted in putting them at the first.
Oh, here I am coming with my number 2, and it's the Falcons. Bijan might.
This crush boy, by the way.
Well, we'll get to Clark Phillips in a second, but I don't know how many times you can look at a draft prospect and say he could come in the NFL and be the best player at his position day one. That's Bijan Robinson. And I know I'm hyping him up a lot, and I do know there's Derrick Henry in the NFL. Bijan is something special. And this will tell you how much I love him. What are my thoughts about drafting running backs in the 1st round?
You are totally against that.
I have no problem with this pick. That's how special he is. I think he's going to come in. He's going to be the bell cow. He's going to change that Falcons offense. He is going to be one of the best players in the league this upcoming year. There's no doubt about it in my mind. Not only is he a threat running the football, but he's a threat catching the football. There's a lot he can do, and won't be run into the ground as most running backs are because they also have Algier behind him. 2nd pick, I liked Matthew Bergeron more than you. He was someone I thought the Steelers could maybe take at pick 33. Was it pick 33 or 32? Whatever it was, 1st pick in the 2nd round. I thought he was very good. I thought he could play the guard position, which is what I always thought he was. I didn't think he was a tackle. He's going to come in there. He's going to play guard. He's going to play next to Jake Matthews. He's going to be part of a Falcons O-line that is growing, and Arthur Smith is going to play murder ball football. That's what the Falcons are going to be this year. Now we look at the other picks. Zach Harrison, I didn't know what to think about him because I thought he did show potential at some plays, but he also kind of disappeared. He kind of just is that Ohio State mid-round edge rusher that we don't really watch or pay close attention to, but always seems to be the guy who gets to the quarterback. Sam Hubbard to the Bengals, he kind of reminds me a lot of him. Then, my boy Clark Phillips. I love Clark Phillips. He was, I believe, my 4th-rated corner off the top of my head. I thought he was a nickel corner that can come in the league and be a day 1 starter and will be dominant at that position. And maybe I just have a thing for Mighty Mouse corners. I mean, I loved, who was the guy from Washington the year before the Chiefs draft? Trey McBride? No. Trent Duffy. McDuffie, okay. I like those type of corners. They're very good. They stick on them. And Utah will not play you in the secondary if you can't hold up against anybody. Clark Phillips can, and he's going to be very, very good in that Atlanta secondary. DeMarco Hellens, he wasn't used much at Alabama, so it's hard for me to judge him. I thought he was fine, but he was their third safety this past year. He was behind Branch. He played behind them. It's hard for me to say this is a bad pick because he just didn't get enough playing time. And it's a little understandable when you're playing behind two NFL safeties as well. So, now it's time for our number one class, and looks like we agree on this. So how much do you love Bryce Young?
I already told you I'm not a huge fan. That's not why I like this draft class.
Is it because they drafted a guy from Oregon?
He's the one guy that I'm like, eh. The thing is about their draft class is they got their quarterback, right? And I'm not saying they drafted a quarterback they got their guy. They think that he is their guy, and they got him, right? And when you've seen him play, he has all of the answers. My question, like I've said, is will he hold up? So we don't know that, right? I think Jonathan Mingo is a really good option to put there. A big guy, fast guy. He can go up and get the ball. He can help out a lot. Johnson, like I said, honestly, I don't know a whole lot about him. He wasn't one of those guys that I watched a lot. I love Chandler Zavala, and I think he is going to be a starter on that offensive line, and they're going to continue to maul people. And I think that Miles Sanders is going to reap the rewards. And then I like Jamie Robinson. He was one of those guys that just by watching how he played, how he hits, and how he reacts, I see a little Quadri Diggs in him, just because he will come up and he'll pop people, and he's always around the ball, and so I like that. And so the reason why I gave them the number one spot, because since the quarterback is the most important position in the NFL by most people's standards, and they got their quarterback, and they got some other pretty good pieces, I put them at number one.
I love Bryce Young. I could talk about him for a long time, but we're almost an hour already, so I'm not gonna. Jonathan Mingo was a wide receiver I did like. I didn't like him as much as everyone else, but I thought he was very talented. DJ Johnson, I didn't watch as much of him, but when I watched Noah Sewell, I did see some. He is interesting. I think he'll be more of a run stuffer than a pass rusher. Chandler Zavala, as you said, he'll be starting right next to Nick McQuanu. The NC State left side is just going to be terrorizing D linemen for years, and I feel so bad for any DB that Chandler Zavala gets a head start running at you, because that's a fast dude, and that's a big dude moving at fast speed. And Jamie Robinson, you liked him more than I did, but where they drafted him, that's just insane value. At worst, you're getting a special teamer because he can do that. But as you said, he can come up. He can tackle. He's not afraid to. He feels like a guy that Evero will kind of use as a ball of clay just wherever he wants on the field. So now it's time to move into Offensive Rookie of the Year. And who is yours?
Dun, dun, dun. Offensive Rookie of the Year. I should have got back to this page. Sorry about that. I'm going to go with Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, it's impossible not to take him.
Here's the thing. Running backs can hit the gate running, whereas I do think that Bryce Young will have some learning experiences. So, yeah, I'm just going to go with a system that favors a running back and what could be a generational running back.
I spent the majority of the Falcons just pretty much praising Bijan Robinson. I've done my work praising him. He's my Offensive Rookie of the Year. Like I said, this dude is special. There's something about him that I would not be surprised if he's the best running back in the league this year. Defensive Rookie of the Year. This is another chalk pick, in my opinion. Kalijah Kancey. As you said, he's playing next to Vita Vea. He's going to get pressures. He's decent in the run game. Probably has some room to go, especially being a little bit more undersized, going against NFL bodies now. But he's next to Vita Vea, which is going to make his life a whole lot easier.
I concur. I actually have the same pick.
Okay, this is going to be a little freaky. Best offseason edition. Who do you got?
David Carr.
David Carr,
I'm
the
sorry.
NFL analyst?
Yes, yes. Because he's been promoting his brother.
Good
So,
God.
no, Derek Carr. Um, if they had a quarterback last year that could have completed some passes, they win more games and they won that division. I don't see what's going to be different this year for them.
So, I'm just kind of going off guys I've already praised. I praised this man a lot in the coaching staff's best offseason additions, Frank Reich. I think what he brings to a team, I think he's a great coach, but especially with the fact they did draft a quarterback first overall, he is going to be very important developing Bryce Young, working with Bryce Young. He's a good offense play caller. He has a good line to run the football behind. And as we saw in Indianapolis and at his time in Philly, he wants to get the running game going. They have all the tools to go. I think Frank Reich's the best offseason addition. And my coach of the year, let's get this out of the way, it's Frank Reich again.
I will go with Frank Reich as well.
He is just so good as a head coach, and he was the scapegoat of Indianapolis that I think we could look back at this in a couple of years from now and just think how stupid Indianapolis was letting him go. Because let's say Indianapolis is the same position, they draft Anthony Richardson. You have that guy work with him, I think it's better. And this is not Josh Shane Steichen, we're yet to see him. But Frank Reich's established, and he has done a great job. He worked great with Carson Wentz coming up in Philadelphia, and he had a new quarterback every year in Indianapolis. There were struggles. Phillip Rivers was probably his best one after Andrew Luck, and he was no prime Phillip Rivers. He finally possibly has this guy, and I could see them hitting the ground running.
Well, let's face it. When you want to talk about Indianapolis and that thing with how Reich went, is they kept bringing in patch meal quarterbacks year after year, and both of us thought that Matt Ryan was going to ball out last year, right? We were wrong. But the thing is you can only do that so many times before the GM's like, oh, I'm in trouble now, so let's get rid of the quarterback, and now we'll say, hey, look, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to draft. I'm going to take my shot and draft in high and get a quarterback, and we're going to see what happens. So I don't think that they would have been able to do that if Reich would have stayed. I think it would have either been one or the other that was actually gone. So if Reich stayed, I think that they would have had a new GM this year. Reich had to go, and he landed on his feet. He's got a great situation. He's got a great roster. If the quarterback works out, he's going to be laughing all the way to playoff runs, and we'll see what happens.
The funniest thing to me is the coach that Indianapolis did hire is still kind of from the Frank Reich tree, because Shane Steichen in Philadelphia worked under Nick Sirianni, who was Frank Reich's offense coordinator. I just find that funny. But now it's time to get MVP. If this division plays out how I think it does, Bryce Young's MVP for me, because I think Carolina does make the playoffs. I think they do a lot of damage. I think he has a great year. Probably around 4,000 passing yards is what I would expect for him. I definitely would hit the over on, I believe it was 3,400 passing yards or something last I saw. Overall,
I don't know.
I think it was something around that. I'd hit the over on that. I expect a good year from Bryce Young. Probably a little bit struggle out of the gate, as you would expect with the rookie quarterback, but as he grows, as he develops, I think the Panthers take a step forward and contend for the playoff spot, and ultimately I do think they make the playoffs. Who is your MVP?
We talked about this. Derek Carr.
Oh.
Remember? David Carr.
Well, I asked best offseason addition. I didn't know.
Oh, no. Sorry. Yes. I have him for both.
Yeah. You didn't say MVP. So standings. I'll just reveal mine all at once because I know we're going to have disagreement, but I know we both have the Bucs at 4th.
Yes.
Saints at 3 for me. Falcons at 2. Panthers at 1.
So I have the Bucks at 4, the Falcons at 3, and I've been literally I wrote this out. How I wrote this out was the Saints on top and the Panthers, and then I've got a little arrow going back and forth. But I'm going to stick with the Saints being on top. I think that Carr is going to give them enough to score early in the season when that defense is going to come together. And then just like last year, I mean, look at how their defense came together last year at the end of the season, and we're just shutting everybody down, right? The problem was their offense couldn't get out of their own way. Well, this year they're going to have both.
The Saints literally decided to figure out the best way to get you and I to disagree on a team. I already didn't care for the Saints last year. Then they brought in Derek Carr, who you and I disagree on more than any other quarterback in the NFL, I'm pretty sure.
I would agree that you're right there.
Yeah, it's like they designed it for us to disagree. One of us will be right, one of us will be wrong.
It makes for a better podcast.
It does. And if David Carr wants to say anything to me, I'm free. Talk to me, David. I know you like to defend your brother. But that's going to wrap us up. Next week's the NFC West. He's going to have his Homer hat on. He's going to be saying how the Seahawks are going to own the 49ers all the podcast next week. I hope everyone's ready for that. As I can already feel the eyeballs getting burned through me as he's staring at his computer screen.
Nope. Next week is going to be an interesting one. As he did say, I do have a Homer hat. Do I think that Seattle can beat the 49ers? I guess you're going to have to tune in next week and find out.
Yep. That's going to do us for now. Enjoy, everyone, and have a great weekend.